Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this first Deadlock tier list where we will be listing the power level of all the heroes in the game. I will be making a lot more tier lists in the future depending on patch updates, also just different topics as well. Anyway, let's get right into it. And we're just going to start from the left, and I just want to quickly say that this guy is so strong. I don't know if you've ever laned against a good Abrams who plays a melee build. Yeah, I don't know. Abrams just, yeah, that's not a fun hero to play against at all. We'll put him right up there on the S tier list. He does scale well. He is very tanky. He's very hard to lane against. He has a shotgun. His shotgun makes it so it's really easy to last hit. And because he's so tanky, he can also play very close to the minions. And the closer you are to the minions, the easier they are also to last hit. His ult, when it's maxed out, makes him immune to silence and stuns and everything, so you're almost guaranteed to get an ult off. And he's just overall a really strong tanky hero that needs to be countered with stuff like Toxic Bullets, Heal Bane, and Decay. So Abraham's definitely one of the S tier heroes right now. Next up we have Bebop. Bebop is hard for me to place because depending on what item builds you go, he can pop off, I will say. Some people spam the bombs, some people play the ult build, and some people go pure gun Bebop. He does have a hook, and it's one of the few abilities in the game that can pull people completely out of position. But I will say, in a lot of games, I feel like Bebop gets ran over. So I think I'm gonna put him in Bebop tier. I don't know. I just feel like in a lot of games he just doesn't get to do like the cool stuff that he's meant to do. I love playing Bebop. I have an ultimate guide in the game and stuff too. I think he falls off late game in a lot of cases. And if you play pure gun Bebop, then I'm like, well, then you could just play gun Ivy instead. And that is true. In the laning stage, Bebop is probably one of the strongest heroes. You can hook people into the tower. You can turn 180 and you can uppercut them into the tower. It's extremely strong. But overall, there's so many games where I'm just shitting on Bebops. This is one of heroes that can be played in a lot of ways for sure. And this is just my assessment based on playing against Bebop in high elo lobbies. And he usually falls off after the laning stage. Then we have Dynamo. Dynamo has the strongest ultimate in the game. It is the Singularity. It's the same ult as Zarya from Overwatch, except that he needs to stand in the center. He pulls everybody in, and it's one of these undodgeable ultis. You can't click anything to get out of the ult. And it's like Enigma ult as well. So because Dynamo is one of the few heroes who has the ability to turn any game, I am putting him in S tier. He also has one of the highest scaling gun damages. And this is something that is kind of funny about Deadlock as a whole, is that this guy is like technically a support, but both his 1 and 2 abilities buffs his damage and fire rate against the targets that he hits. So Dynamo is one of those characters that if you just build a kinetic dash, you can literally kinetic dash forward, stun someone, and you can one-clip them before they land. And that's happened to me more times than I'm proud of. Next up, we have Grey Talon. Grey Talon is one of the laning stage demons, has a very strong nuke that it can harass a lot with. Does a lot of burst damage. His ult does a lot of burst damage. His movement speed also scales with Spirit, which is very interesting, which makes him quite powerful. But I will say, I feel that Grey Talon also falls off a little bit later in the game. And going gun builds on him isn't really that viable either. He becomes very squishy, and I feel like in a lot of games, you're better off just having a Vindicta if you're gonna play long range gun damage. He does a lot of burst damage with the Spirit build, but I think that I'm gonna put Grey Talon in B tier as well. Grey Talon is definitely annoying to lane against. Also, you have to remember I'm spamming Lash, so some of this might be a little bit biased towards the fact that I'm a Lash spammer. And when I play Lash, I just wait for him to jump up in the air, and then I jump up after him. Either I just shoot him till he dies, or I just ult him back down to the ground, and there's literally nothing he can do to escape. Next up, we have Haze. Haze is one of the hyper carries in the game. She has an extremely strong ult that's like a AoE flurry that does crap tons of damage. Her laning stage is very weak, but she has a very strong sleep. So what she does sometimes is she can sleep you, and then she can go combo it with a heavy melee, or combo it with like Vindicta or a hook. A very funny combo you can do is you play Haze and Bebop. Haze stealths in, sleeps them, and then Bebop hooks them into the tower. Very strong. Haze is one of those characters who needs shit tons of farm to do well. And there are other carries who just like will work better throughout the game. but Hayes is definitely very good at farming. Once you get Tesla bullets, she definitely farms really fast, but I just don't think she's in that great of a spot right now because she really only dominates games if you have like 10, 20,000 souls more than the rest of the team. Hayes has the ability to turn a game as well. If you buy silence, which is like your bullet silence, and then you do the AoE ult and you can like get like an insane combo off. But that's like also just your own team's fault for not positioning well enough or not pressing metal skin, or yeah, there are a lot of counters to it too. So this is another hero that I'll put in B tier. Infernus. Infernus is one of the heroes I've played a lot. I think his design is really cool. He shoots fire with his finger guns. Infernus is really good for a lot of reasons. He applies a very strong damage over time. He also applies healing debuffs when you upgrade his abilities. And you can also have a lot of sustain by getting Spirit Lifesteal, because then all the targets that you've applied or burned to also will heal you. Infernus is especially good right now because the meta is to play a lot of tanks like Shiv and Abrams and so on. And Infernus kind of counters that because he applies a lot of health reducing debuffs, and you always buy toxic bullets on him as the first 3k item. And it also does percentage based health damage, which is another item that's just, it's really good for countering tanks. So I'm going to put Infernus on A tier. I think the downside of him is also that this is another hero that needs a lot of farm, and sometimes he doesn't get to his timing. There's always a big discussion if you should buy Ricochet or not on him, because it delays how long it takes before you buy Leech. But Ricochet makes him like one of the fastest farmers in the game, so that's something you have to figure out for yourself. Okay, Ivy is a weird hero. Ivy's ult recently got changed. Ivy supposedly a supportive kit. She has a root. She has a tether ability that buffs attack speed and heals of nearby teammates. For some reason, she has the strongest gun in the game. For some reason, the fire rate and the damage on Ivy's gun makes her one of the strongest hitters in the game. And that is a little bit strange, but that's also what's cool about this game, is that regardless of like hero seems to be a support or a carry, you can always itemize the way you want it to be. I am gonna put Ivy in S tier though, because there's very few heroes who can carry games more than Ivy does. So one thing that is very common, after they changed her ult, she can now, once a minute, just fly away after a short channeling duration. So what's very common is that she will split push one of the side lanes very far while everybody is like occupied on the other side of the map. Because she has such a big fire rate, and you get some strong items like Intensifying Mags, Titanic Magazine, and Tesla Bullets and so on. You push down walkers really quickly, and then as soon as they rotate to try to defend, you just fly out of there, and then you rinse repeat. And it's a way of farming a lot of souls and applying a lot of pressure and giving your team flex slots as well. Okay, next up we have Kelvin. So Kelvin recently had a pretty big change. A few patches ago, Kelvin was by far the strongest hero in the game because his Frost Beam was disarmed when it was at max strength. That was unbelievably strong. Kelvin is now in a very interesting spot where he's normally played as a pseudo support, where you usually buy Rescue Beam. Rescue Beam is an item that heals your teammate for about 30%, and you can also pull them towards you. So basically you can use that as a save. Another interesting thing about Kelvin is that both his Frost Grenade and his ult heals those around you. So if you're maxing your ult, it actually scales with Spirit and heals everybody inside. So you can heal for several hundred health per second. So now it's very common to play Kelvin as like a kind of like a position 4 in Dota. Like he is very fast. He can slow the enemies down. He can displace them. He can like ult while you have like a strong player and a strong enemy inside the dome, and you will always win that trade because the dome will also heal everybody inside it. He's also really good at securing mid boss, because as soon as the crystal comes down, you can ult and basically no one else can get inside the bubble. So it's always like one of the best heroes for getting a very safe mid-boss kill, because mid-boss is one of the things that can really shift a game. So with a Kelvin on your team, you're much more likely to kill mid-boss in a situation where you normally wouldn't. His beam is still very strong. It still spreads to multiple targets and still slows them down a lot, but it no longer disarms. And I kind of liked that this now feels like a semi-support. You can still play him as like full beam build if you want. It's just not as strong as it used to be. It's just balanced. So I'm going to put him in A. Lady Geist. Lady Geist is one of the hardest heroes to lane against. Her grenade has a very low cooldown, a very big AoE, and only a half-second fuse time, and it can harass you out of the lane very quickly. The way this hero works is that she sacrifices her health to do damage, and then her ult is the same as Terrorblade in Dota, where she switches health with the opponent. You need to be very close, so that's why you normally buy a Warp Stone on her, so that once you're low, you can blink into someone and health swap. And when you max out your lifesteal beam, it also silences them. So it's like a wombo combo where you blink in, you swap health, and then you start lifesteals beaming them while they're getting silenced. Pretty obnoxious to play against. One of those heroes where you can't really go all in unless you know her ult is on cooldown, but it's important to remember that you can actually see that at the top screen. You can see everyone's ult status. You can see if the enemies have ults too, unlike Dota and stuff where you only can see your teammates' ults. So yeah, this is a good hero all throughout the game. I don't think she has any like super crazy power spikes. She's just she's hard to lane against, and then she kind of just naturally scales. A lot of people go with the bomb build. She has a very strong gun animation too, but most people go down the spirit damage or like a hybrid build. I'm going to put her in A tier. I don't think she really solo carries games unless she's very far ahead, but definitely a hero that I personally find boring, but she's, yeah, some people love that playstyle. Speaking of boring, now we have the very opposite. My main man, Mr. Jacob Lash. This is my favorite hero in the game. The one hero I play the most. It's a very similar playstyle to Doomfist in Overwatch. He is incredibly strong in the right hands, has a lot of movement tech, a very high skill ceiling, and a very high skill floor, meaning that the first time you play him, you're gonna basically say that he's trash Lash, because there's so much to learn about every single engagement, about every single 1v1, like what abilities to bait out, when to ult, how to use your ult, how high up you want to be. His ground slam does more damage the higher up you are, but the higher up you are, sometimes it's also harder to hit it. Lash is just a very versatile character, which makes him really cool to play for someone who does content creation like me, because I'm going to spend a lot of time playing the game, and kind of maining a hero that has a very high skill cap is a lot of fun. I will say some games is really hard to play Lash. If you fall slightly behind, he's probably one of the hardest heroes to play to come back, because your combos don't really do much, and you're kind of forced to get into the fray. You're kind of forced to jump in over them and try to lift them up and toss them around. There's a lot of counters to him. Paradox ult can swap you around. Mo and Krill can get the Phantom Strike and stun you out of it. Wraith can stun you out of it. Kelvin is actually a very strong counter to Lash, because after you toss them all into the ground, he can instantly dome, and then you won't hit or slam, and he will heal everybody back up. So that's why I'm going to put Lash in A tier, because this is not a fun list. This is a power level list. I don't think Lash is S tier. I think he's definitely an A. He's also the lowest picked hero right now, but I think that also makes sense because of how hard he is to learn. The hero design on him is so cool. There's not a huge variety of different item builds you can really go for him to play him in high MMR, but there are some adjustments. Some people buy more gun items. I play him very spirit heavy because I love the wombo combos with like low cooldown on ult and everything. Yeah, Lash is kind of like a position 3 in Dota. Also funny, when you go in-game and you look at Lash's lore, it just says Jacob Lash is an asshole, and I think that's pretty funny. Okay, next up we have McGinnis. McGinnis is an interesting one. She is one of the fastest pushers in the game. She spawns a lot of turrets. She can displace the map by putting walls up and wall people in. Her ult also spams a rocket barrage and stuff. A lot of people nowadays buy her as a gun-focused hero, because she does have a minigun, and if you have like intensifying bullets and Titanic mag and stuff, you can deal a lot of damage with McGinnis. I don't think she's that great. I think that most games I play against McGinnis, she needs to be so far ahead to be relevant. Usually what a lot of McGinnis players will do, they will just like split push a side lane and take down towers really fast. Like I mentioned with Ivy earlier, there's only one difference. McGinnis is not as good as Ivy at getting out of there. So I feel like regardless of if McGinnis has slightly more pushing power than Ivy, it's never worth it, because you can catch her much easier. She's forced to buy fleet foot. She's forced to get movement speed abilities, because she doesn't really have an easy way of getting back out of there. So I'm actually going to put her in C tier. All right, next up we have Mo and Krill. Mo and Krill is a pretty funny hero. He's essentially got Pudge ult from Dota. He's very tanky. You usually buy the Torment Pulse item on him that does a lot of damage around you, and it also makes you farm a lot faster. He can disarm and lifesteal while he's underground crawling. His kit is very versatile. He fits in a lot of comps. Very annoying to play against, and his ult is one of the few ults that completely disables ults like Lash, and 7 ult as well. So Mon Krill, super strong hero, I think. Definitely up there. One of the strongest ones. His gun is not good at long range, but it's kind of like a fast shotgun. So if you get monster rounds and stuff, you can take down walkers really fast because their hitbox is so big and every pellet will hit. He's also really good at last hitting, just like any other shotgun character. So I'm gonna put him in A tier. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Mon Krill also gets 30 permanent health every time someone dies while they're under effect of his ult. So that's another bonus. Next up we have Paradox. Paradox is a hero. When I talked to Seagull about Paradox, he basically said that this hero is OP, and because of the way the toolkit is designed, this hero will always be either really good or really bad. There's no in between, just because of like, there's no easy way to balance her kit. Paradox has a shield. It's kind of like a Reinhardt shield in Overwatch. She can put in front of her, or actually Orisa, the old Orisa shield might be a better comparison. And she can shoot behind it. She has a kinetic carbine that she charges up and does like a short time stop / stun, long range damage. She has a lot of good poke in lane. Her ult is like Vengeful Spirit in Dota. She sends out a projectile, and if it attaches to the target, they swap places. While they swap places, you have 100% Spirit lifesteal. And you can also, if you put your wall between them, it also gets them swapped through the wall and they take 10% damage at the same time. So Paradox is extremely obnoxious to lane against. I will say she falls off a little bit later in the game. And quite frankly, I don't feel like I've played a lot of games where Paradox completely carries the game. I used to think that this was one of the most broken heroes in the game. And I don't really think so anymore. I think she's... Oh, it's not a shield. It slows down time, so bullets will go through her wall after. Okay, yeah. So it delays how long it takes for bullets to go through. Initially, I thought Paradox was a lot better than what I do now. It might also be just because there are not a lot of Paradox mains out there, but I also feel like she just like doesn't do that much super late game. I don't feel like her abilities scale that much. And I feel like she can very easily just get caught out of position, and she doesn't really have any escapes. So I'm going to put her in B tier. Originally, I wanted to put her in A tier, but then I realized that like she's much easier to counter than you think. I also will say that I feel like Valve has done a pretty good job in balancing overall. There are a few heroes that feel very strong, but there's no hero that feels really weak. And I think that's a pretty important distinction. You can make heroes really strong, but how do you avoid making heroes really weak? Next up, we have Pocket. Pocket is like Puck in Dota. So it's one of the most annoying heroes to play against. His ult applies a damage over time, non-lethal to the entire team nearby. Does tons of damage over time. Also applies healing debuff when you've upgraded it. And it's one of those ults that once you have the ult on you, you usually just want to back off and heal up because it's gonna do a lot of damage to you. He also has an immunity ability as well as a cloak he can send out and teleport to. So this is one of those heroes you really want to buy a Silence Glyph for because he's really hard to catch if you don't do that. On very high MMR, Pocket is great. On very low MMR, I think Pocket is kind of troll. I think in terms of the shotgun characters, I think Shiv and Abrams are just always going to be better. And I think that Pocket is just one of those heroes. I think it's kind of like Lash where like if you play him a lot, he's going to be really good. But I think in a lot of situations, he is also just not gonna do much because he requires to get in there too. Like he requires to be next to them. Some pockets, they will just apply the ult and then run out. So I think I'm gonna put him in B tier as well. I still think that like it's much more common and easier for like heroes like Infernus, Kelvin, Ladygeist, and so on to like dominate lobbies. And since this is kind of like a tier list of the overall power level, I just think that in a lot of cases, Pocket does never get to do what his toolkit has designed him to do. That is also because of all the disables that are in the game. Then next up, we have 7. When I first started playing Deadlock, 7 seemed like the strongest hero to me. He seemed like a hyper carry. His movement speed scales with spirit. He farms really fast. He has a orb that does a lot of AoE damage around you. He also has a single target stun that is delayed after a few seconds, and he also has like a built-in Tesla bullets ability on his 3. He also has one of the strongest ults in the game, which is Storm Cloud. He can just like float up in the air somewhere and channel a Storm Cloud over a long period of time. That does shit tons of damage, and the range just increases. And it's one of the very few ults that can like solo defend your base when it gets like pushed really far in. He can like Majestic Leap up and then ult. The problem is that the higher up you get in elo, the easier he is to counter. You can counter him with a knockdown, you can counter him with curse, you can counter him by line of sight, just hiding, and he becomes like, when you build the ult build, you're kind of just focused on that one thing. You're just like getting cooldown reduction, you get the Spirit Lifesteal, you get Mystic Slow, you get Majestic Leap and all that. And they're kind of just like praying for those Hail Mary moments. It's like playing like a Twitch clip simulator. You're just like looking for that big moment where you're gonna like 1v4 or something. Of course, there's a skill cap to it where you want to wait for the team fights to already start. So maybe people run out of stamina charges before you start ulting, so it's harder for them to escape it. He can also buy Unstoppable so that people can't stop his ult for like 7 seconds. But at the end of the day, you can also line of sight. You can simply just hide as well. So I think I'm putting him in B tier as well. I don't think he's as good as these heroes. I just don't. I think he's a noob destroyer. I think he's literally one of the skill check heroes. I think like in low elo, he just destroys. And I think the higher up you get, the harder it gets to pull that off. Then we have Shiv. Now, you know what, guys? I want you to guess where I'm gonna put Shiv. This guy needs a separate category, okay? This guy called Shiv. So, funny backstory. In this game, you can actually access the developer console and you can spawn in heroes before they come out. So I was playtesting Shiv a little bit before he was finished. His ult was a little bit different. And I was like, oh, this hero seems fun. I can't wait to play him. And then he came out. They changed his ult to be more like Axe ult in Dota. And when he came out, he just destroyed every lobby. There were people posting screenshots of winning 40 games out of 45 and shit, like with like 90-95% win rate. And that was basically because his dagger applies a slow and a damage over time, and you could stack it by keep tossing daggers. So once you buy rapid recharge, you have 5 daggers you can throw at them. It does shit tons of damage over time, and when you're max rage, it also did AoE, hits nearby targets. And if you buy Spirit Lifesteal, you're just unkillable. They hotfixed this literally a day later, and they halved the damage on his dagger. And here's the funny thing. He's still incredibly broken. Shiv is the one hero that is destroying the most games in high elo lobbies still, after they halved the damage on the daggers. So that is something that is pretty interesting. Literally halved the damage on this dagger, and still he's incredibly strong. So yeah, if you want to win games, play Shiv, but I think they'll nerf him again. I think he's definitely too strong. He's also not fun to play against. It's not just the dagger, it's also the fact that his 3 ability is the same as the new facet for Death Prophet in Dota, where some of the damage you take is turned into damage over time. But there's one difference here. He can also press that button to negate some of that damage over time he's taking. And if he's max rage, he will negate more of that damage. That means that you can't really burst him down because parts of it will always be taken as damage over time. And it just makes him incredibly tanky, even without tank items, to be honest. The rage mechanic is essentially that when he deals damage, a rage bar builds up, and once the bar reaches 10, all his abilities are powered up. So his dagger hits nearby targets, his charge will do another charge, so it does like an echo charge after, and his 3 will negate more damage when it's max rage. And then I think the rage goes away after. His ult is that he jumps and does like an execute, and if that kills them, he can instantly do it again and resets cooldown. Just an overall really strong hero. Way too strong in my opinion. You can dodge the ult with Ethereal Shift if you buy that item, or Viscous or whatever. Vindicta. Vindicta is another noob killer for sure. She's one of the most popular characters in the game. She can fly up in the air. She has a powerful long range. She has the best long range damage with her gun. So if you want to play left click builds and stay far away, Vindicta is your hero. She also has an ability called Stake, which essentially throws down a stake on the ground, and then if you get caught in an AoE, you get like tethered to the ground for 2 seconds. That's also why buying Alchemical Fire on Vindicta is really strong, because if you stake someone, you toss Alchemical Fire at the same spot, they will definitely be hit by it and take burn damage, but they also will take increased damage from bullets. I think it's 40%. So that just perfectly combos with Vindicta. So you just toss both at the same time, and if they hit, then they just take shit tons of damage. Her ult is that she scopes in and kills people, does a lot of damage, does bonus damage when they're under 50%, I believe. Another interesting thing about this ult is that she gets bonus souls for killing blows. She's the only hero in the game that can actually accelerate her farm exponentially by getting last hits. And she even gets more bonus souls if you max her ult first. If you max your ult first, you get an extra 600 souls whenever you get a killing blow. So imagine that your team is playing aggressive or something and you're chilling in the back and you buy rapid recharge, so you have 5 charges of your ult. You can go get so far ahead on souls that you can buy, like you can play a hybrid build of both spirit damage to make your ult stronger and also left click damage. Most people focus mostly on mouse one though. But yeah, she's very strong. I'll put her in A tier. I don't think I'll put her in S tier because she struggles from the same issues that Grey Talon does, which is that she can also easily get caught, especially when you face against the Lash with superior stamina. You just like can't get away. You'll have to buy Warp Stone, or you have to buy Ethereal Shift, and you basically have to rely on your team to peel for you to stay alive. But she can solo carry games if she's left alone. Next up, we have Viscus. Viscus is a very interesting hero. They recently changed him because the punch did so much damage and they nerfed, quote unquote nerfed to the punch. The way they nerfed the punch was that instead of making it a damaging spell that scaled with spirit, they now made it a melee ability. So now essentially when he does that punch that he can spam that punches people up in the air, it is actually considered a melee ability, which means that a lot of people now buy melee items on Viscus. People can buy Life Strike or other abilities that empower your melee attacks, which changes up the itemizing a lot for Viscus, and I think it made it more balanced, but it also opens up for more interesting builds. Yeah, so Viscus is definitely very strong. Viscus has a super cool ultimate. It is the same as Pango from Dota or Hamster in Overwatch. Really hard to play. Really hard to control. You roll around, you can press left mouse to go faster. When it's maxed out, you can also cast items and abilities while rolling around. And this helps you a lot because the hard part is how slow the turning speed is. So you can get items to help you turn around. You can get Warp Stone to suddenly switch directions. Some people even buy Phantom Strike to directly TP onto someone and slow them. You can do some crazy burst combos where you roll in Phantom Strike onto someone, then instantly punch them up in the air. There's a lot of burst damage. I think Viscus is definitely one of the hardest heroes to play in the game, right up there with Lash and Pocket. But I'm going to put him in A tier. And then next up we have Warden. Warden has a very versatile toolkit. He has a flask that he can throw, alchemical flask. It slows them and does spirit damage. Very strong in lane. It does a lot of harass damage. He also has a spirit shield that also increases his movement speed, and he has a root. So the interesting thing about the way his root works is that once you cast it on someone, a circle appears around you in a large radius, and then you have to exit that circle within a certain amount of time, or else you'll get rooted. If you get rooted, you're almost guaranteed to be dead because his gun animation is very strong and he will just spam headshots on you. It's very common to buy Slowing Hex on Warden because Slowing Hex will stop them from getting outside the circle in time, and it's much easier to hit the root. And your flask also removes 1 stamina when it's upgraded. So Warden is really good at catching people. It's very common to play movement speed oriented build. You get Fleet Foot, Heroic Aura, all these items that make you super fast, which makes it hilarious to play him. His ult also applies a big AoE lifesteal. The downside of the ult is that it takes like 2.2 seconds to cast the channel before it starts. So sometimes you get bursted down before you're able to get your ult off, which is pretty annoying. But definitely a fun hero to play, and I think he's very strong, and I think in a lot of games, Warden can really pop off. I think it's one of the hardest heroes to stop if he gets ahead, because he will just start running everybody down. He will just tower dive. He's pretty tanky as well, and he will just be incredibly hard to stop. I think I'm going to put him in A as well. I think he definitely carries more games than these ones. Next up, we have Wraith. To me, Wraith is basically everything Haze wants to be. Wraith has a ultimate that is easy to apply. It makes the enemy stunned, and combined with her card spam, it makes it super easy to burst someone down. She's probably one of the heroes with the highest power spike once you get her ult. If you buy the multiple charges item, you can get 3 cards and your ult when you only have 3,000 souls. It can burst almost anyone down. She's very strong. Her gun is very strong. Her fire rate is very good. She has an active ability that increases attack speed, and when it's maxed out, it also gives lifesteal. She also has a blink. She tosses a card out and blinks to it. Wraith is a really strong hyper carry that scales well throughout the entire game and farms really fast with Tesla bullets. I think this is, this hero is basically everything that Hayes wants to be. But she's very easy to hear. Her heels are so loud. Her footsteps are so loud. So yeah, we're going to put her in A tier as well. And then finally we have Yamato. Yamato is one of those heroes that in one way is similar to Lash. There's a lot of movement required. It's also a hero that probably takes a little while to learn to like jump around and do cool stuff. Her ult is very unique because it makes you untargetable and afterwards invincible for 6 seconds. It refreshes the cooldown of warrior abilities and they have like faster recharge times. And she's very hard to kill. If a Yamato gets ahead, it's really hard to catch up because she will just start like she can dive so deep without dying. She has a hook ability that latches onto a target and a sword slice. And she can do extreme burst damage with her wand as well. She's also the only hero in the game who has a right click ability that does AoE damage. So she can actually harass you behind cover. With a right click, she throws these small bombs and it uses up 2 ammo instead of 1. So she's also very strong in laning. I will say, I feel like this hero is only good if you're like a one trick or a spammer. I feel like 90% of the games I face a Yamato, she just doesn't get to do all the stuff she wants to do. I think my biggest issue with Yamato is that a lot of the times she just pops her ult because she's about to die. But because like the transformation takes a while as she channels, it also just sets up your entire team to get ready to just blast her down once her ult runs out. Because 6 seconds isn't a long time, and she will usually be on 1 HP before those 6 seconds run out. If you have an Infernus applying dots on her, or like for instance me with Lash as well, to me it's just very easy to kill Yamato. Like once she pops her ult, you just like jump up in the air and you fly for a little bit. You just kite around. She's not gonna be able to catch you and do a lot of damage unless she has Silence Glyph, a lot of damage, and is in general very far ahead. And I'm going to put her in B tier. I think the hero is strong, but I think that it requires people to really know what they're doing. And in most cases, that does not happen. So before we finish this video, it is time to list them within the categories. So first thing I'm going to do is move Shiv all the way up here. Definitely the strongest hero in the game. And then I'm going to do this. The reason why I do it in this order is because these 3 heroes have the most singular impact on a game, and it doesn't necessarily require a team. The difference with Dynamo is that, yes, he can completely change a battle with his ult, but it requires a lot of coordination. You need to be at the right place at the right time. You need to communicate with your team, and they need to follow up after you grab them all in your ult. Dynamo can also buy a refresher orb, and I think it's just harder to pull off a good Dynamo ult compared to how easy it is for a Ivy to just like solo shove a lane and fly out when people come to defend. For the A tier, I think I'm gonna put Mo and Krill and Wraith first because they both have ultimates that can cancel a lot of abilities. They are both very good at countering a specific hero that is kind of popping off. It's kind of forcing people to play more defensive. When you play against Wraith, you almost always want to buy Reactive Barrier, for instance. And then next up, I'm going to put Viscous here because he can also just really change the... He can do so much. We have a clip, by the way, from yesterday on stream. There was a Viscous spammer in my game, and he saved me for like a minute. I was fighting against like 4 people, and he had Echo Shard. He puts the goo square on me, saves me. Echo Shards puts the goo square on me again, then rescue beams and pulls me in. I run away. He does it again. It was just like, I was fucking dying laughing. And for like 3 minutes, he kept me alive and our entire team had time to respawn before they could push. And it was just so funny. I think all these heroes after are kind of interchangeable. I don't think there's like a specific scenario where they're like that much stronger than the others. For B tier, I think definitely Pocket, Paradox, and Bebop are probably on the stronger side. I don't think Yamato is that weak. I think Haze is pretty weak. And I just think that Great Talon is pretty weak too. I think Great Talon is another skill check where he will just like burst down a lot of noobs, but in a lot of cases in higher elo lobbies, you're not going to have as fun playing Great Talon. So yeah, that was my first ever Deadlock tier list. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. There will be 3 videos per week coming out on the AverageJonas YouTube channel, and leave a comment down below if you think this tier list was good, and if it was bad, tell me why it was bad, please. All right, I'll see you in the next video.